Hi everyone, it's Amanda from the Quilting Bee in Massillon, Ohio, and I've had a ton of requests for a pattern and a tutorial on how I made what I call my Florida bag. This is made out of Northcott's Color Collage collection. I had actually made a sample, had some leftover bits, so I pieced the panel that I needed to do this. It has a nice little recessed zipper in it. So you got that guy. No outside pockets or anything. I didn't make it fancy, so I have written the pattern. I'm going to test it and do some videos for it. So let's see if this works. The fabric I'm going to use for my outside panel is Xanadu because it's just absolutely divine. This is from Wyndham. We are in love with it. So I'm going to use Xanadu as the outside. I'm going to do a little box panel for the bottom because Xanadu is directional, so I'm going to have to cut it and turn it, but I'll show you what I do there. So I grabbed a purple grunge to use as my bottom. I'm going to use this paint splatter as my lining because it's got the different colors splattered with it, and I thought it would work well. And then for my straps, I'm going to use this fun pink. This is part of Robert Kaufman's storyboard line. We're in love with it. So then for my zipper, because I'll use this for my recess zipper as well, I figured I'd pop that little bit of purple. So this is what I'm going for. We're going to see if it works. Things to think about as you're doing your bag. If your fabric is directional, and this Northcott Color Collage kind of was, kind of wasn't, so I didn't worry too much. You want to think about what you want to have on the bottom though. So I'm using Xanadu. Xanadu is directional. I think it goes this way, yes, the rainbows. So I need to cut this in half anyways because I want it to be right sides up on both sides, but I also don't want this on the bottom. So I have taken a piece of grunge that I'm going to use as my bottom panel and use that to create my bag body panel that I'm going to then iron onto the R-form. So just think about that. If you are using directional fabric, you're going to want to create two pieces to then stitch, either stitch them back together, or like I said, I'm adding a piece of grunge. I know my bottom's going to be 5 inches, so this is a, it's going to be around 5 inches. So this is a 5-inch piece of grunge just to sort of create that bottom piece. So this would be one side of my bag with that print facing up, my piece of grunge that I'm going to attach here. I'm just going to clip it to mark it. And then with this piece, this is facing up, I'm going to turn it so that when I attach it to this piece of grunge, both sides of the panel will be reading face up. So you're just making sure your two pieces, if you put them together, are both facing up. So you've had to flip the pattern because normally the pattern would just go in one direction. So just to further illustrate directional fabric, you can see my tree, and then I sewed that panel of grunge. And so if you keep going down the next side, that tree is going to look upside down here, but this is right side up. And we're doing this because as we bring the bag body up, we need this side right side up and that side to be right side up. This is our bag body. So next thing I'm going to do is take this piece and fuse it to my fusible R-form. If you're using Soft and Stable, you're going to want to base it on and then quilt it. I'm going to press it on, it will adhere. I am going to give it a few lines of quilting because we're quilters. So you want to get this attached to whatever you're using to stabilize the bag, and then give it a good quilting real quick. once you have quilted your panel, so you can see I've got my centerpiece, I just did some quick curves. I'll put a picture here to show you how I just sort of taped my lines to try to keep everything straight. You want to trim this down to your preferred size. So the pattern is being written for a 22-inch because it's a big work tote. You can go smaller if you want. We are using 1/2-inch seams for everything at this point. So just bear that in mind if it feels large, or cut it down. You can make it as wide or not as wide as you so choose. So once you've got your panel with your pieces going in the right direction, you're just going to fold it in half here, like this, right sides together, and take it to your machine and sew along each side, keeping your opening open. So I'm going to do a 1/2-inch seam because you're using a thick fusible, and just stitch at each edge here. So the next step for your bag panel is to box your corners. This is what allows your bag to sort of stand up and have its width. I use 2.5 inches in mine. Again, depending on what size tote you're doing, you can modify up or down, but 2.5 inches is what I've written this for. So it's a nice, if you double that, 2.5 inches then becomes a 5-inch depth for your bag. So let me switch the camera so you can see this. So what you want to do is press your bag down and pull your sides out of the way. And sort of take a look inside, make sure where you're pressing down your panel, you're on the center of your inside here. And what you're going to do is measure 2.5 inches up and make a mark. So I'm measuring 2.5 inches just from this tip of my triangle that I'm making, and make a mark. You can use whatever you want because you're not going to see it. And then draw a line straight across because you're going to stitch on that. And you're going to do the same to the other end. Put your hand inside that bag. Press your seam down, and again, I'm looking inside to make sure it sort of feels like I'm in the center. Measure, I'm going to use a smaller ruler, and go 1 inch, 2 inch, 2.5 inches up. Make a little line there. Now I can tell I haven't pulled this out all the way, so I'm going to keep my finger there and make sure I am centered. Draw that line. And again, I'm going to stitch on both these lines. So I've gone and stitched on that drawn line. And like I said, I'm going to just leave my flaps here so you can see. If you measure this, we measured 2.5 inches up from our corner. So that means that our bag is going to be double that, 5 inches. And what that does, just turn this inside out real quick for you to see. Corners out, helps your bag stand up. So you can see that's why this was about a 5-inch piece. Probably should have done 5.5, but I'm not going to worry about it. So I've got that solid base, and this will stand up. I do leave those triangles attached. You can trim them off if you want, but honestly your lining is going to cover that, and it just gives a little bit more stability, so I leave them on. Now this tote does have some interior pockets, so my way of making pockets I think is the typical way, but I make them quick and dirty. If you've got some SF101 on hand, that makes your pocket a little bit sturdier. I have made pockets where I haven't used it because we are doubling over the fabric, but if you've got some SF101, I would go ahead and use it. So your rule of thumb is determine what size you want your pocket to be. Your width will always be your width. I add 1 inch just because of seam allowance and all that you're going to lose when you attach it. And then double the length because you're going to fold over your pocket. So for my larger main pocket in my bag, I want it to finish to be 10 by 14 before I've stitched it in. So this is a 10 by 28 piece of fabric. Then for my smaller piece that I'm actually going to sew a little divider line in, so to throw a couple phones or whatnot, I want this to finish at 7.5 height by 12, because again, I'm gonna create a divider in it. So I've made it 12 by 15 length, since it's going to get folded over. And then what I'm gonna do with my SF101 pieces that I happen to have, I'm just gonna fuse my SF101 to one side of the fabric. Now this is batiks, so it doesn't really matter. You want to use it on the wrong side of your fabric as you press it. And I didn't even measure my SF101, I just sort of cut it out. So let me turn this. So you want to make sure your fabric is nice and pressed. And SF101, this is a Pellin product, is smooth on one side, scratchy on the other. You want to put scratchy side down, again, on the wrong side of your fabric. I am going just whichever way I have, keeping in mind this is going to get doubled over, so I don't care if I've got a little bit of SF101 on the other half. Again, it's just a stabilizer, it's not going to impact anything. So just press on, you don't iron it on, press that onto the fabric, like so. Fold it in half. Again, you want your wrong sides out. So you're gonna have one folded edge and then wrong sides, so that fusible is gonna be facing out. Give that a quick press, because what you're going to do is take this to your machine and stitch. You don't have to stitch on your fold line. Stitch around, leave yourself a turn hole, and we're going to turn this out. So what this does is create sort of a reinforced two sides, 2 layers of fabric pocket that you can then attach to your lining. So I'm going to do my other piece here. So once you've stitched around, and again, only one side of my fabric is fused with the SF101. I didn't do the whole piece. Left my little turn hole here. So we're just going to turn this out just like you would a placemat. Get all that fabric pulled out. I did nip off my corners where I sewed, just so I get a nice crisp corner. I did grab, I have this little sort of chopstick looking thing that I keep up at the desk just to help push out corners. You don't want to use anything sharp, you'll poke a hole and you'll be angry. So what this gives you then is a finished piece, like so, no raw edges. I'm going to tuck in this one end. When I go to press, use a little fusible seam tape to close that up, and then just top stitch around, and that gives me my panel piece for that smaller pocket. I'm going to do the same for the larger. So this is a fusible seam, sometimes called webbing or seam tape. I'm just going to use this to sort of keep those turn holes closed, and then top stitch over and it'll hold everything. So there's my hole. I want to get it so it's about straight across. Keep that paper on, place it on one side of your seam here. Give it a press with a hot iron. Activates that glue. Peel off the tape. Just fold that seam back in. Give your whole piece a good press. Take it to the iron and just a scant 1/8 inch edge just to give it a top stitch. Now, because we are doing a recessed zipper, rather than use one solid piece for your lining, you're going to, according to the pattern, cut 2 pieces. So I cut 2 pieces of 20 by 24 inch of my lining. So if it were directional, you would want to pay attention to how you're going to do this, but we're going to attach our pockets to these panels before we attach our recessed zipper. It's just easier when we have 2 separate pieces. So what you want to bear in mind is that the bottom of your bag, or bottom of your interior lining, you're going to lose 1/2 inch for seam, 2.5 inch to be in the bottom of the bag. So when you think about where to place your pocket panel, then you want it to be a little higher up. You don't want to be too close to the edge. You want to be at least 6 inches up from the bottom, just to account for that seam allowance in the boxed bottom of your bag. But you decide where you want to put it. I am doing my one large piece, so when I attach that, all you're going to do is just top stitch around 3 sides, of course leaving one side open because that's going to create your pocket. When I do my smaller pocket, because I want to have 2 pockets made out of this for cell phone or pens or what have you, I will stitch all the way around, just as I will on the other one, and then I'll come back in the center and stitch here as well. Again, just making sure I'm not too high, not too far from the bottom. I usually go about 6 inches from the top is sort of my happy point of being able to open the bag, get into the pockets, and go. So cut your little 2 pieces that you're going to use for your tabs. All the dimensions are in the instructions. And we need to create sort of a false hem, because we're going to put these on either side of our zipper, and it creates our pull tabs. So I will flip the camera so you can see how we're going to do this. So with your right sides down, you're going to fold back about 1/4 inch on each end, and then press with a hot iron. You can use a little bead of basing glue or just Elmer's glue, whatever you have, just to sort of hold that seam in place until you can press it. And I'm not measuring this, I'm just doing a guesstimate of my 1/4 inch seam, giving that a good finger press, and then a little bead of glue, because again, that's just to hold it. And do your other piece as well. Again, right sides are down. I'm just basting that in place until I can get it to the iron. So take this to your iron, give those a quick press to set them in place. Then you're going to put them, fold them right sides together, and stitch on each side, just on those two sides. And then you just need to turn these out, pushing out those little corners. You can either use your nail, or like I've always got this little chopstick guy. Give it a good press, and these are your tabs for your zipper. There you go. Okay, so we're gonna work on our zippers. Now, I'm using a 40-inch zipper because that's what we sell in the shop. If you're making a smaller tote, you can usually get 2 zippers out of it. But your rule of thumb is you want your zipper to extend a bit beyond your lining. So if my lining is 24 inches and it's a 40-inch zipper, I'm going to add about 3 inches. So I'm gonna take this down to a 27-inch zipper. Now, your zipper is going to come with a metal stop. Leave that. Push your zippers more to the middle so that you're not cutting and then having to refeed your zippers. And then you're just going to cut across at whatever that point is for your opening. So I will flip this so you can sort of see my perspective. So this is my lining because I've already attached my pockets. And I don't know if I can get it all on the camera, but I want my zipper to come about 1.5 inches off each end. That's why I'm going with 27 inches. You can go longer or shorter, whatever you so choose. So I'm just going to slice across. Again, my zipper pulls are in the middle. I am going to take this to the machine, this other end, and just sew across this a couple times just so I've got 2 closed ends of the zipper. So now we're going to attach our tabs. So we have our 2 little tabs. One is large, one is big. Your larger one, you want to insert over this open end that has your metal stopper. And we're just going to stitch all the way around. I actually go around twice, and that just helps secure the zipper into these tabs because that's what we're going to be pulling on. And then your other end, you will slide into your smaller piece. And again, top stitch. And I go around twice, maybe 1/8 inch from the edge. You just want to make sure, depending on how wide your zipper is, that you're catching the zipper in your seam. So slide those in and stitch around both sides. Now we're going to take our 2 panel pieces, and this is the side panel of your recessed zipper. You want this to be as long as your lining, so 24 inches in my case. Again, if you adjust your bag down, just adjust that down. 24 inches, and we're going to create that same false hem that we did before on both of these pieces. So laying it right sides down and bringing it in, this time about 3/8 of an inch. We want it to come in just a little bit shorter than our lining fabric. So again, I'm just going to base glue this real quick, and we'll move on to the next step. it's very important that you make sure your two lengths are the same length. So if you need to adjust your last hem so that it's the same length, go ahead and do that. I'm going to press this with a hot iron to set those seams real quick, and then we're going to fold them together, and then we're going to fold them in half lengthwise, right sides together, and press. So I've pressed right sides together for these panel pieces. You want to find your center point. We're going to find our center point on both our panel pieces and our zipper. So easiest thing to do is find your center point and go give this a press. It'll hold that point for you. Do that on both your pieces here. So I'm going to go press that with an iron real quick. And then you want to find the center point on your zipper. Do not use your zipper tabs to find that center point because these are two different sizes. Go to the edge of where those zipper bits meet and find your center that way. You can either mark with a pin. If you want, you could mark with a pen, P-E-N. So you'll be able to see it. You're gonna lose that mark if you mark it on the end in your seam allowance. And I'm marking it on both sides because you're gonna need it on both sides. So this is the middle point of my zipper. So I'm just going to put a little mark at both ends. Hopefully you can see that. Just two little marks. So let's go press these. Okay, so what we're going to do now is make a sandwich out of this panel piece, one panel piece, and your zipper. I lay my panel piece to the left and then place my zipper inside it because I'm right-handed, so I work to the left. You might have to flip this if you're left-handed, but we're going to make a quick little zipper sandwich and then attach the zipper foot to your machine and then stitch down, and we'll have one half of this panel attached. So right sides are together, so we're going to open up this panel, and we have our pressed fold line that we can see, and we're going to align to our dots on this. So you want your zipper pulls facing up. Place this inside and align that mark with your fold. I was just right about there. And you want that zipper to be right along that raw edge of your panel. I clip this in a couple places to hold it in place. And you want to make sure both sides of your panel are right there. So when I clip it, I'm clipping all three because we're going to zip down this side edge. Again, keeping my zipper right here aligned with those raw edges. We are going to stitch down this side to attach all three layers, keeping everything right at that edge. You will want to read the manual for how to use your zipper foot. Everyone's zipper foot could be a little bit different. On my Baby Lock Jubilant, I am sewing to the right of the zipper, so I've attached it using my right notch. If I were flipping on the other side, I would attach this because the purpose of the foot is so it nestles right up against that zipper, but you can still catch your seam and not have any excess bulk. One thing, as you are making your way down and doing your stitching, as you come up to your zipper pulls, it may get a little tricky. So what I do is I stop, and with this still open, you can push those zipper pulls up into where you've already stitched, and you will find you can navigate all the way down much better. So once you've got that stitched, it's time for us to turn this out. And what you're going to do is hold one tab of your panel and just pull on that zipper, and it's going to start to pull everything out. And then you're going to take this to your iron, give it a nice press, and top stitch right along this edge to just keep that flap down. So I've top stitched along that side. We're going to repeat the same process using our other panel piece. This gets a little tricky. We have to do a little bit of folding to get everything in place because we've already attached one panel piece to it. So here's how you do it. So again, we're going to do the same process, but we've already got this bit in here. So what we're going to do is open up the flap for the other panel. And when you go to align at your center points, you're just going to have to sort of fold this edge over to bring this over and clip. You can also double check that you're at your center point because your two panel pieces really should meet across from each other. So you can kind of finagle it that way. And again, just fold this in and pin or clip it to keep everything in place. Use your zipper foot, and we're just going to zip, just stitch all the way down there again. When you're doing that fold over, you want to make sure you're folding this over and bringing this edge over and not catching that already attached panel piece in this fold. Okay, then once again, we're going to pull our tube out. Helpful hint, hold it at your larger tab end so you're not having to pull that larger tab through the tube. I'm pretty sure I messed that up the first time. So again, you're just going to hold and pull that zipper through. Now there's more going on here because we already have that one side done. So it's going to take you a minute. So breathe, just breathe your way through it. After you get through those feet, it really does get easier. Just be careful when you're pulling through, not the feet, the zipper pulls. They're going to be a bit of a bitch. Just breathe, nudge them lovingly so you don't poke any holes, and just keep going. Now granted, I'm making a really big bag. If you were using a shorter zipper, you wouldn't have this kind of problem. If you use a zipper with one pull, it would probably be easier. I like to do things difficult. I'm a difficult kind of girl. If you also, rather than hold it right down at the tube, hold it sort of midway through as you get it pulled through, you'll see it starts to go through much faster. I'm almost there. Okay. There you go. So again, I'm going to give this a good press and then stitch right along that side just to adhere it. We're so close. Okay, zipper is ready. So now it's time to attach it to your lining. So again, you want your lining to be in two pieces as per the pattern, because it's just easier when you're attaching these zipper pieces. You want to, from each of the top sides, and for me, since I did those pockets, I know this is my top edge, and on my other piece, this is my pocket opening. So from this top edge, you want to draw a line 1.5 inches down from the top. This is the recessed part of the game. So draw a line 1.5 inches down from the top of each side of your lining fabric. So I'm just going to measure 1.5 inches from the top. Again, I triple check that I'm at the top of what this lining will be, and draw a line. And I'm going to do that to both pieces. Again, oops, see, that's the bottom. There's the top of that pocket. You want to center the zipper, so I'm going to fold my handle piece here in half and mark my center point, find my center point on my panel pieces. Again, it just keeps everything, you know, centered. So there's my center point. I'm just going to give that a crease with my finger. I'm going to mark the underside edge of my zipper. So again, I'm just finding my center point, moving my zipper out of the way. And because this is the underside, I'm just going to put a dot there and not worry about it. There's my two center marks. So to attach this then, I'm going to take a panel. This is the top again. This is where my line is drawn. Turn my zipper upside down so the pulls are down and align it, again, matching up where I've marked that center, right on the line that I drew. That is what I'm going to stitch on. So I'm just going to align that there, and you want to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from that line. You're going to repeat on the other side. So again, I have my piece with my line drawn, making sure that's up. I'm going to take my zipper that's attached to one piece of the panel, again, turn it upside down, and making sure I align my marked center points. Also making sure my lining pieces are equidistant. And I'm just going to pin and stitch that again 1/8 of an inch from that drawn line. Okay, so what you end up with, you've sewn it upside down, right side out, whatever. When you turn this out, you have, this is the direction you sewed it in. Okay, so it's upside down. So if you play pretend, this is your lining that's going to go inside the bag. Your zipper is here on top. And when you open up that lining, you've got what you're going to see on the inside of your bag. So now we can kind of almost finish up this lining. So what you want to do is right sides together. You're going to go to your machine and we're just going to stitch all the way around and sort of reattach our lining. You need to make sure you leave a turn hole because at some point you're going to insert this in the tote bag and turn it out. So don't go small. I go probably 5-6 inches because we'll close this up when we pull everything back through. So I'm going to stitch, I'm going to use about a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch seam, just because I like to make sure everything stays together. Again, leaving a turn hole, and you want to make sure you've at your ends here, you've got some of your lining in the tabs. Pull your tabs up. so that you're truly stitching from the top of your lining. So once you have stitched your lining up and left your turn hole, I left mine at the bottom of my bag, just personal preference. You want to box your corners just like you did for your body of the bag. So I'm just gonna unzip this. Again, put my hand in here, get everything to lay flat, and box both corners of your lining. When you put your hand in, you can feel the interior of that seam that you just sewed. So you just want to sort of push this out, and with your fingers, make sure your seams are aligned. That just sort of helps ensure your fabric is flat and straight as well, for you to mark that 1/2 inch up, 2.5 inches, because that's what we did on our bag's body. And I actually, for this point, rather than try to mark points, I align my stitch line here with a line on my ruler, and that seems to work just fine. So I'm going to mark that. Again, just keeping everything aligned. That's my stitch line. Put a pin just to make sure everything stays where it needs to be. And do the same at your other corner. Again, I'm feeling to make sure my seams are sort of aligned so that it's going to be even. You can feel in there. Bring that up 2.5 inches. And just as we did before, we're just going to stitch right on that line. Okay, so we are at the point of straps. So we have our lining with our recessed zipper attached. We have pockets in that lining. We have our giant body of the bag. And again, if you want to size this down, your lining piece and your finished foam body panel just need to be the same size. So if you decide that my 24 inches is too big and you want to make it 20, just trim your panel down to 20 inches and do 20 inches for your lining. You just want to keep everyone sized the same. So straps, there's 100 different ways to do tote straps. You could use the nylon webbing that we carry. You could just use SF101. I like to use the In Our Form in my straps because I like a comfy strap. And so that's what I'm going to show you how I do these straps. You could use one large piece of fabric. Just depends on what you have in your stash. So what I like to use for my straps are 2.5 inch strips. There's 100 different methodologies for doing straps. So try some different ways, see what you like. I like 2.5 inch strips just because it's easier for me to sort of work with the R form that I'm gonna lay in the middle. So this is a great way to use up jelly roll strips if you have them. So I have 2 sets of 2.5 inch strips. These measure by 40 inches, which will be more than enough length. We'll probably end up trimming these down. So I need my 2.5 inch strips. I'm also gonna take some of my In Our Form. And I happen to have a couple long pieces. And I'm going to cut these down to 1.5 inches. So again, I'm just cutting these. We're gonna trim them down later. So a couple 1.5 inch strips of this good stuff. So you're going to take your pieces of in-R form, you're going to take your strips, and we're going to go to the iron. So what we're going to do is take one of our long strips, and we're going to lay one of the 1.5 inch strips of in-R form down the center and fuse it. This is not going to be precise. So we are going to eyeball this, and I know some of you might get irritated with me when I say that, but eyeballing is fine. They're tote straps. It's not rocket science. So what we're going to do, and my R form is going to be longer, we're going to trim it down. Don't lose any sleep over it. I'm going to flip the camera so you can see how we're going to eyeball and fuse this R form to one side of our tote strap. So what you're going to do is lay your in-R form strap down, take one of your strap pieces, and remember, we fused to the wrong side of fabric. We're just going to lay this down, and I just sort of use my fingers to feel that, all right, that's about in the middle of that 2.5 inch strip. Okay, and we're just going to fuse this. So just attach that at a quick press to fuse. And again, I just sort of run my fingers to say, yeah, that feels like that's about in the middle. Keep coming down. I just sort of feel with my fingers. So I've attached it to one side of my strip. It's pretty even. I can live with that. So then what we're going to do, so we have fused to one side, take a second strip, right sides together, fabrics together, stitch down one of these edges right along that R form, okay? So we're creating sort of a sleeve. Yes, you could use this with a piece of 5 inch fabric, but then you're trying to gauge where you should place the R form, and I find 2.5 strips is just easier to work with. So we're gonna take it to our machine and just stitch right sides together right up to that edge of the R form all the way down. Back at your pussy mat then, open up your piece, okay, with that R form closer to you, and we are going to fold up one edge onto that R form and press. Now we're not dealing with a lot of fabric, so watch your fingers, maybe turn off the steam, and press that one smaller raw edge onto the R form. This is so we don't have any raw edges showing. So all the way down, fuse that short edge back onto that strip of R form. So then what you're going to do is gauge how much you can fold over to then meet that other edge that you've done. On this piece, it's all going to depend on how you've sewn. I did about 1/4 inch. This piece I might have to go a little scant because I think I cut one of these pieces off. So all I'm doing is folding it over a little bit and then doing my next fold over to make sure it meets and covers that other side. So doing that initial fold over and press just helps keep things in place. Then what you're going to do is fold over until you meet at that other edge that's fused to that R form. I also like to press because it will adhere some of that fabric to the remaining piece of that R form that's exposed. Just helps keep things in place until I can get it to my machine. And again, I'm just folding over until those edges meet. And then we're going to take these straps back to the machine. We're going to top stitch about 1/8 inch off of that edge where we've met those two ends. I also do it on the other side so it looks uniform. So 1/8 of an inch from each side, go give it a top stitch. Okay, so our straps are ready. We are in the home stretch. Let's attach these suckers. Okay, so to assemble everything, and I'm going to trim my straps up real quick. And we will test to see how long we want our straps to be. That is definitely personal preference. Okay, so to put everything together, you can go ahead and turn your bag right side out, your bag panel, body of the bag. Boom. Then you want to take your lining with it turned inside out. So you want your right sides always touching. If this were not a batik, this would be the back side of the fabric. My good side has this. So wrong side out, you'll know you've got your wrong side out because your triangles will be facing out. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the body of my bag and tuck it inside this lining. And you of course want to make sure your bag sides are aligned correctly. So you can do that by, you've got the seam of your lining and the seam of your bag. So just sort of shift things around to get them where they need to be. So again, I'm aligning my inside and outside seams together to say, I know that's at my center, and I'm going to use a clip just to hold these pieces in place. And I'm doing the same on the other side. I have found where I attached my two panels, I have my seam of my bag, and I'm just aligning those and using a clip to clip them in place. Rule of thumb for your straps is when you fold them in half and you place them at the top of your bag, you want them to be about the length of your bag. I am not going to bother trimming these. I'm just going to sew these down maybe an extra inch, inch and a half. But that's your general rule of thumb. You can always clip them into place on the bag, put it over your shoulder, and see how that fits. So let's see how this fits. So I just clip them there. And this is a really big bag. So that feels a little long, but again, what I'm gonna do is just sew them about an inch and a half further in when I do this process. You can also just trim them down. So I want them a little bit shorter. I'm gonna trim them down. I'm gonna trim one set and then just trim the other set to the same length. So yeah, 2 inches, I don't know. So that's the length I'm going to use. So you want to fold your straps in half. And with this loop down, we're going to insert this in between the lining and the bag. So you don't want it on just the lining, you don't want it on the inside. You want it between those two layers. So slide it in between there, keeping that fold so that they stay in the right direction. So then what you want to do after you have slid your strap in, and you want to make sure you keep everything directionally correct in that you don't want your straps to twist. You want to open up your strap and determine where you want it to be attached. So this is a fairly wide bag, so I'm going to go a little bit wider than I normally would. I am putting about 8 inches between where each of my straps are going to get sewn in. And again, if you needed to, go ahead and clip these, and you can test that your straps aren't going to turn after you've clipped them. And by turn is, I mean, I don't want them twisted when I turn everything out. So if you then pull your strap out, you can see the strap is going to be the way it needs to be. Do the same on the other side, making sure where you clip is right where your other straps are. So align that. So my straps are tucked between my lining and the bag panel. Something else you can do, if it makes you nervous that this is going to be so close to the edge, is just bring them up 1/2 inch. Just helps you catch a bit more of that strap. So you can see, I'm just bringing them up just a little bit, and it's all personal preference, depends on how big the bag is. So we're going to stitch all the way around this. Now what you want to make sure of, because we have a recessed zipper, is that you've flipped your recessed zipper down. You want to be stitching your lining fabric to the top edge of your bag, not your zipper. So as you put it around your machine, take it around the throat, you're just going to keep flipping that zipper down so that you're only catching your lining. And we're going to top stitch 1/2 inch from the edge, back stitch at your beginning and endings, and attach the lining to this. You're also going to be catching your straps. So again, just make sure you're being very cognizant of flipping that recessed zipper down. Now to do this part, I take my table off. If you have any kind of an attachment here, your accessories box, take that off so you're just working with this small base of your machine. It just makes it easier to rotate everything around as you stitch 1/2 inch, making sure you tuck your zipper down. So you're just attaching this lining to the body of the bag, catching your straps. I will actually back stitch all the way over the straps and then go forward again just to really secure those. Again, as I'm coming around this turn, I'm tucking all of this down, so I'm only stitching the lining. So as you go, tuck all of this good stuff down. Okay, we've sewn all the way around, only the lining, not the zipper. We have our tabs. I leave those. So now we can turn it out. So if you recall, we left a turn hole in our lining. So let's gently, if you pull too hard, you're going to tear some stitches, pull that bag body through that turn hole you left in your lining. Okay, so you're going to have lining and bag. Take your lining back to your machine. You can press this if you want. You just want to close that up. So I just top stitched and closed that turn hole. So now push your lining into the bag, and you can see you've got your interior pockets. You have a recessed zipper. There's one more step. We're almost done. So the last thing you want to do is close up your zipper. We want to tuck all of this down, and we are going to top stitch around the edge of our bag so that it will keep that zipper down in the bag and not keep poofing up. You can also, as a different step, because this is double-sided fusible R-form, if you use that, go around with an iron just at the top of your bag and give that a hot press, and that will help keep that lining staying flush down as well. So I'm going to go around the edge of the bag and stitch all the way around here. You just want to make sure you're not catching your zipper in anything, nor your straps. So you've got to kind of finagle things out of the way. And so I keep everything open and just go around this way around my machine, similar to how we just attached our straps, making sure I pull my strap out, it's not tucked in, so that it just reinforces that all the way around. And it's done. So I've top stitched, I don't know, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch from that top. So now the recessed zipper stays down. I have my straps and the work bag is ready to go. There are instructions on how you can size down if you need to in the pattern online, but there you have it. It's a little time consuming, but it's not that difficult. Fresh needle, you don't need your walking foot, you need a zipper foot, but that is how you make a tote bag with a recessed zipper.